So friends, I want to start this video off right away by saying that if you or someone you care about struggles to manage their anger, you are not alone. Anger management is one of the most common things that brings clients into my psychotherapy practice. And struggling with anger does not mean that there's anything wrong with you. It does not mean you're a bad person. It just means you might need to learn some skills and practice them in order to manage your anger better and your reactions when you are angry. Hi, I'm Quenby Gallahan, licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been a therapist here in the state of California for over a decade, and this channel, The Grateful Therapist, is all about mental health and personal growth. So if you're the type of person like me who loves to learn about that kind of stuff, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you know when my next video comes out. Okay, so let me start by saying that I'm going to try and organize this video in a really simple, easy way so that you can come away with some things to think about, maybe some techniques to try. So I'm going to try and organize this video into 5 steps that help you dealing with your anger. And here is a little disclaimer. There are so many different ways that therapists can work with people who are struggling with anger issues. This is not going to be an all-inclusive video. I'm just going to share with you some of the top tips or techniques that I use to work with my clients who are struggling with anger. And you might be wondering right away, why do I seem to struggle with anger issues more than some other people? Why am I someone who gets triggered and angry really easily, who gets frustrated, who wants to yell at someone or slam a door and storm out of the room? Why is it so much harder for me than other people? And that, of course, is a complicated, variable answer. But if you think about it, there's probably some things you learned pretty early on in life from your family of origin. So you can ask yourself, how was anger dealt with in my own house? How was conflict dealt with? So it might be something you learned from growing up in your family, or maybe you've been through some really hard stuff. Maybe you have a history of trauma, and so you're more hyper vigilant and you're easier to get triggered. There's all sorts of reasons. We're all wired differently. It might be helpful to explore where your anger comes from, but I'm going to give you things to think about that it doesn't really matter where the origin is. These are tools that you can use right now. It really is worth the time and effort to learn some skills around dealing with your anger, because if you don't and you're somebody who is prone to outbursts, yelling, arguments, saying cruel things, kind of bigger reactions. And one of the reasons it's so important to do is because anger can really affect your relationships, whether it's at work or at home with a significant other, with your kids, because those of us who struggle with getting angry and have big reactions to that, it makes it harder for other people to get close with us because people don't feel safe. They don't feel like comfortable with you if you're somebody who at any point can get triggered and start yelling or whatever it is that you do when you're angry. I've struggled with this in my own life, so I'm speaking from experience, and I've helped a lot of clients through it as well, and it's worth the work. It's worth learning about your anger, understanding your anger, and putting in some simple practices that might help you, because it'll help you have better relationships with people overall. So a lot of the first stages of my work with clients who are struggling to manage their anger has to do with truly understanding how anger works inside yourself. How does it work for you? What happens in your mind and in your body when you first get triggered and you're angry? The reason I think it's so important to understand what happens for you, specifically for you when you're angry, is that the more we understand it, the more control we have over it. It's really that simple. The more we understand what is happening in our brain, in our body, the more control we have, the more choice we have, because a lot of dealing with anger is catching the very first sign. Step 1 is you really need to understand what happens in your body as soon as you get triggered. So I often will work with clients doing what I call a body map. A body map is a tool I use for many different things, and I always use it with anger management because Often one of the very first signs that we're triggered, we're hooked, we're starting to get angry is we feel it in our body. So I give someone a blank body drawing and we fill it in. And many people will say the same sort of things happen to us when we're angry. Our heart starts beating really fast. Our fists go into clenching, like we want to grab something or hit something. People will say their thoughts start going extremely fast. People will say they feel an energy moving through your body. It's so important for those of us who struggle with anger to understand these first signs and symptoms, because when you understand that and you catch it sooner, you have more choice and more control over what happens next. If you don't want to use a body drawing with clients or you don't feel comfortable with that for some reason, you can just talk about it, but you have to get super clear what happens to you that's going to give you an indicator or a signal that you are hooked or triggered or starting to get angry. Most people blow right through this. It happens so quickly. People go from 0 to 60 with anger really fast. And one of the things we're trying to do is slow the process down so that we can change our reaction. We can change what we say and what we do next. The next step, step 2, is understanding your thoughts. So there are usually certain thoughts we have when we are angry. Thoughts about ourselves or thoughts about another person. So something happens, gets us hooked, we feel the sensations of anger in our body, and then we have some kind of thought. And it's usually a really unhelpful thought that we go to, and we need to catch that thought in our mind so that we can replace it with a more helpful thought. And again, this can happen to any of us. Our thoughts, I often call our mind our monkey mind because we have so many thoughts and they happen so fast. But what many of us are not taught to do is to actually question the thoughts that are going through our mind, slow down and say, what is that thought and is this thought helpful? So part of anger management is understanding the thoughts that lead you to get super triggered and feel really angry. So let me use an example. Let's say you're talking to your significant other and they say something like, did you clean the bathroom today? Immediately you notice your heart start pounding. That's your body stuff, right? That we talked about in step 1. What thoughts go through your mind? Oftentimes people will jump to a thought and it's something like, why is she always nagging me about the bathroom? Or she doesn't think I help out around here, or what's she on me for? Or she thinks I'm such a moron I would remember. Like really unhelpful thoughts. This can happen to any of us. And you have a thought like that, of course you're going to get really angry really fast. That could happen to any of us, right? So you need to be able to pay attention and catch the thoughts that trigger you. You know, you might have to do a little looking, like what kind of thoughts really trigger me when I'm mad? Is it that I think someone's saying I'm not helpful, or I feel unappreciated, or I feel criticized? They're usually these kind of core thoughts about our worth. So I need to pay attention to what are the types of thoughts that really trigger me and send me into a spiral of anger, or where do I go in my mind when someone says something like this? Because you need to replace that thought with something more helpful. So as a therapist, of course, if someone brought that example to me about your spouse asking if you clean the bathroom, I'm going to take the time to break that all down thoroughly, because as I said in the beginning, the more you understand your patterns and your triggers and your hooks, the more control and choice you have over them. So I actually would have them write out each thought. Where did your mind go when your spouse said that? Did it go to, she doesn't think I help out around here? Well, let's take a look at that thought. Is it true? And then we're going to come up with a replacement thought like, okay, I'm getting kind of angry right now. I feel it in my body. I feel my thoughts going to that crazy place where I feel judged, unloved, underappreciated. That's the stuff that usually really spirals me into anger. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. So let's talk about step 3, probably the most important step, and that is what I call the pause. Step 3 is what I call the pause, and it's one of the most important steps in getting more control over your anger and your reactivity. The thing is, any of us who've struggled with anger know it all happens so fast. You feel the body sensations, you have the negative thoughts, next thing you know, you're throwing something across the room. it happens so fast. Our job is to slow it down. And I'm talking 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. That's all you need to do to pause, check in with your body, what's happening. Oh, I'm hooked and I'm triggered. Check in with your thoughts. I'm going to that negative place in my mind of thoughts that make me really angry. Let me pause for a second. And the pause is where the magic is. The pause is your opportunity. Your pause is your chance to not get so angry and say something you're going to regret, but it's your moment of choice. It's your moment to say, let me check in about this. I'm taking a breath. And if you can catch that moment, friends, if we can catch that, we can change the whole outcome. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to step 4, which is to talk yourself through. Talk yourself through. So if you can give yourself this 20 seconds to catch what's happening in your body, notice the thoughts, take that pause, you're going to have to find a way to replace these unhelpful, negative thoughts with something more helpful, and talk yourself through and be able to say, oh, wait, I feel it. I'm going into my spiral of anger. I'm going into negative thoughts. I'm feeling really agitated, like I just want to say something nasty. I just want to storm out of here. I just want to hurt someone. Often, some of us, when we get angry, our first response is to come out punching, like we feel hurt or we feel afraid. I want to make someone else feel hurt or afraid. So we need to talk ourselves through and acknowledge what's happening. Just name it. I got hooked. I'm triggered. I'm in my anger right now. Whoa, I need to pause. I need to catch this negative thinking I have, and I need to give myself a pause right now. I'm in the anger. So you need to talk to yourself kind of gently but firmly and say, whoa, I'm taking a pause here. I notice I'm in my anger. Nothing gets solved when I'm in my anger. I'm having this thought that she thinks I'm stupid. She thinks I'm unhelpful. Is that really true? Probably not, because I've rehearsed this through many times before. I know this is one of my triggers. I'm taking a pause, I'm shifting out of here, I'm making a different choice. And then, friends, if you've made it through step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you've acknowledged that you're hooked, you can do what I would call step 5, which is you have to move the energy of anger. Anger is very energetic. Any of us who've felt it know that it feels like we could run a marathon with all those chemicals flooding through our body because we're so triggered, we're so hooked, and nothing can be solved from that place. We're not even in the right place in our brains to have any constructive conversation, so we need to move the anger. And oftentimes that involves taking responsibility, being an adult and saying, I'm triggered, I need to go take a walk. I need to go shoot some hoops. I need to go to the gym. I need to be alone for just a few minutes, because you need to move that energy of anger. It's very powerful energy surging through your body. You can't just sit down. You can't have a constructive conversation. You can't take a big old nap. You need to actually move it. I will say, I'm really triggered right now. I don't think I can have any kind of constructive conversation. Give me 15 minutes. I'm just going to walk up and down the street a few times and come back. And do not come back to try and resolve anything when your heart is still beating fast, because nothing constructive can come during that time. You need to give yourself a break. You need to give yourself an adult timeout. And often for many of us, it's not just sitting. It has to be active and moving, because you feel the energy of it. You have to move it. And it doesn't mean you shut down. It doesn't mean you push your partner away or your kid away. It means you say, I'm taking a break. And you know what's really helpful, friends? Let the people who care about you, the people that on the other side of your anger, let them know that you're working on this at a time when you're calm, and say, listen, we know I've been dealing with my anger. I'm working on some things. I'm trying to catch the anger. I'm trying to slow it down so I don't get so reactive. I need your help. Like, if you can tell I'm like that, I'm just going to need some space. I'm going to need to pause. I'm going to need to come back to our conversation in 30 minutes. Okay, so there is a good 5 steps for dealing with anger. It's a good start, right? Not all inclusive, but there's some things in there that all of us could maybe benefit from. So I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you're subscribed so you know when another mental health type video comes out. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Thanks so much.